This is a really interesting bridge in Lahore, Pakistan, and I'm going to cover some of the design aspects and some of the constraints related to this bridge. And I'm showing it because several people have sent me this. It does show up in a meme about why the designers chose this design and maybe questioning that design. So again, mostly you'll see questions about why. So it looks like you've got a single road that, for some unknown reason, goes in a loop, and there's no other connections with it. So this is where the question or the meme kind of starts from, and that's the premise of the whole question. And so the thought was, can this loop be removed? Is it necessary? Can't you just make a straight connection there from the intersection with the other road, and the loop is unnecessary? So let's start by talking about some of the constraints. And again, the overall goal for this, in my opinion, or from my perspective, is to provide access of this new roadway that's going to connect these two areas without conflicting with the railroad. So some of the things to look at as constraints are the nearby homes and buildings. There are some water features in this area. Of course, the railroad. And so the main thing with the railroad is providing enough clearance. Either you can also go below ground to provide this, or above the ground. Typically, in a lot of cases, you're going to see that going above the railroad is the more feasible option. And then, of course, the roads in the area, the full system, and in particular the road shown here, which is going to be connected to. So this is the after drawing. So we see the loop here now, and we see the road crossing the railroad. So that elevation difference is really important. We need enough clearance between the top of the railroad cars and the bottom of this bridge so that there's not a strike there, and so that the railroad can operate without being impacted by this road. And so it is grade separated, meaning the grade of the railroad and the grade of the road are separate from each other so that they do not conflict. And so that's the key thing we're looking for here, is providing enough clearance to do that. So from the after period, the kind of the geometric design constraints are the vertical clearance over the railroad, and then the slope of the loop. And that's really what we come back to, and that's why the loop is employed here, is because that slope is very important. We can't have too steep of a road, or in particular heavier vehicles, large trucks, can't navigate up a really steep roadway. So let's think about the alternatives. And so we've got this approximately 275 meter long loop that really is focused on helping create the change in elevation in that small area, that compact area. So instead of having them go up a short but steep ramp, this loop allows the vehicles to change elevation over a longer distance, so that the corresponding slope is much more gradual than it would be if it was a ramp that connected directly to the bridge that crosses the railroad. And we can also see in this image how close some of these water features are as a constraint to this project. So a lot of things to work with from the engineering perspective. So the thought was, what could we do if we remove this loop? And again, a lot of the things you may see on the internet, if you see this particular location, is, why do we need that loop? Let's just provide that direct connection from the intersection with the existing road to the bridge that crosses the railroad. And again, a lot of this comes back to that slope. So to remove the loop, to achieve this vertical clearance for the railroad, if we were going to use a ramp, it would necessarily displace buildings and people, and it also wouldn't connect easily with the adjacent road. So if we were to put this long ramp, the issue we're going to have when it crosses that road is, you're either going to have issues with the vertical clearance, or you're going to have to realign that road so that it crosses this new ramp at an appropriate elevation so they actually connect with each other. So you either need enough room to provide vertical clearance, or you need to have them where they connect with each other. So that would cause a lot of additional work to tie all those things in. So ultimately, you can see for these various reasons that using a long straight ramp is not really going to be a very feasible solution in this case. And ultimately, the design that results, in my opinion, is a reasonable engineering solution that fits within these given site constraints and limitations, and meets those goals of providing clearance over the railroad and also not having slopes that are too excessive for the vehicles. Using this, changing their elevation from the intersection in the roads on either side of the railroad to reach that height and elevation they need so that it provides enough clearance over the railroad.